All right, welcome back, everybody. So we have with us Law&Crime's in-court reporter, Elizabeth Millner, who is back with us, going to be answering all of your questions before she has to jump back into the courtroom. She was there for all of the testimony today. She's been there for all the testimony for every day. Elizabeth, it's great to see you. So besides the questions, like from El Spelunker, who says, will Elizabeth write a tell-all book after this? Or a comment from Tablet Lingua, who says, Elizabeth for president. Besides those great comments, so you already got one vote, 2 votes, you have my vote. Okay, so besides those, we had this super chat question from Richard Ezios, excuse me, and it says, can you please dive in and elaborate about this bombshell phone evidence that was filed June 9th by the prosecution that they're trying to bring in? Do you know what this is about, or what this could be about?
Yeah, so I think it kind of could possibly be about, as far as the prosecution goes, is that the government wanted to enter some note entries that Jane had made in her phone. This was after Cassie's lawsuit, and they wanted to bring this up under redirect. And so there was kind of some arguments about it this morning, but it seems like from the government's perspective, they really wanted to get in one particular, at least sentence from this voice note, or from this note in Jane's phone app, where Jane had expressed in December of 2023 that she felt manipulated and she felt obligated to be doing these hotel nights about 98% of the time. The government, in their argument this morning, was saying this kind of rebuts the cross-examination as far as Jane, as far as the questions that the defense was kind of posing to Jane as far as just her willingness to participate in these hotel nights. But according to the government, they want to use this particular sentence, at least from my understanding of it, just so that way they can kind of help rebut this under redirect. However, they should have possibly introduced this under direct, but I think given where the cross-examination has gone, that they were trying to introduce more exhibits as well too. But it seems like from their perspective that they just wanted that one little piece of sentence, because it seemed like the judge didn't want all of these exhibits to be put in under redirect. But the judge said that he'll reserve his ruling as to that one sentence. So we don't know if that sentence will be admitted, if the jury will hear this particular note yet, but I believe that is the answer to your question, and I hope I answered it well.
Okay, what about this? We got a question from Michaela, and this is really interesting because I can't get a sense of it either based on the reporting. Do we know why testimony was delayed today? I saw it was due to an unknown issue, but wanted to ask if you may have heard anything. I mean, this just came up again right before the break. It seems that the judge had even wanted, or the prosecution even wanted, Sean Combs to be a part of this meeting. That is, there was some issue that was discussed in the robing room. They have concerns. Do you have any idea what is going on in the judge's chambers?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I have no idea what's going on, and I think a lot of us have been kind of scrambling to figure out what exactly is happening, because it seems like from both sides they're being very tight-lipped about this. But from the defense's perspective, Sean Combs wasn't in the back for the conversations that were had in the robing room or the chambers room, and it wasn't being transcribed either, so he wasn't able to follow along. So from the defense's perspective, they wanted to make sure that their client was able to be a part of these discussions. But here's what we do know. And I'm going to wait for the ambulance to pass real quick. Okay, now we're good. But as far as just what we do...
So Elizabeth, it's super loud, super loud. I'll jump in. I'll jump in as we wait for this to happen, because it's, you're in downtown New York. Okay, so very rude. They're interrupting our show, by the way, but it sounds like it's an emergency, so there you go. Okay, back to you, Elizabeth. So now, talking about what happened with this issue, as far as you know.
Yeah, of course. So what we do know is that this was a conversation between both parties, so the defense as well as the prosecution. But also, I think what the interesting part is, this was a conversation between Jane's attorney too. And so it was all kind of 3 different parties in the back in the robing room discussing this. And so court was delayed for a while this morning. It's been a really weird morning this morning. There was stuff going on before court happened. There was stuff going on once court started. And so it really kind of delayed the proceedings. I don't think the jury even sat down in the jury box until close to maybe 11 o'clock this morning. Now, mind you, court was supposed to start at 9 a.m. this morning, so it really was a significant delay, and a lot of us were kind of scrambling to figure out what was going on. A lot of rumors kind of swirling, so we don't know the full answer, and we were hoping to kind of get an answer about what possibly they were discussing before the lunch break, but it seemed like from both sides, the government and the defense, they kept it tight-lipped. The judge ordered a sidebar. Obviously, that white noise was playing in the background. It was super loud, and we were were thinking, okay, after the sidebar is over, maybe they'll talk about it. And then they were like, okay, lunch break, everyone. And so then lunch break happened. So unfortunately, we still don't know the full scope of what was going on, but it seemed like a very important conversation that was being had because it took so long. I think Diddy really wanted to be a part of it because he seemed a little kind of agitated that he didn't know what was going on, and the defense attorneys were kind of shielding him, talking with him, whispering with him as they were kind of trying to figure out, I think, from their own end what was happening too.
Well, I'll tell you, the judge upheld this ruling where the identities of these people that were involved in a January 2024 incident, they will not be disclosed. This regarded a trip to Las Vegas where she, Sean Combs, and this group, including an unnamed rapper, they had apparently watched this kind of voyeuristic sex session, this woman who had sex with an entertainer that both she and Combs had used in the past. But the judge said that this is not among the alleged acts connected to the sex trafficking charges that Combs faces. So you can see why they made that ruling right there. Okay, this is a really, really important question about the jury. This is from Leg 7K. A question for Elizabeth Millner. Now that the cross-examination for Jane is coming to an end today, have you had any insights and thoughts on the jury's overall reaction to Jane?
I don't know how they're feeling about Jane necessarily. I think there were times maybe during, especially her cross-examination, because I think kind of the issue is we hear one thing under direct and you feel for her, and this kind of applies to other witnesses too, where you really kind of feel for them while they're under direct. But then when you kind of peel back the layers just a little bit more under cross-examination, you're kind of learning more of just the scope of everything. So whether it be the text messages, whether it be even her kind of willingness or alleged willingness to participate in these hotel nights and possibly being fine with them, you feel like you start to kind of learn a little bit more and a little bit deeper under the cross-examination. So, for example, when they were talking today about this unnamed rapper and his girlfriend/wife who was going to Vegas and Jane was going along with them, when the jury saw who this unnamed rapper was, because unfortunately we still aren't able to see the exhibits, I did see one juror in the second row kind of going, interesting. So I feel like as far as just where their heads are at, I don't really know. There are also times where like I'm seeing them kind of either looking away or I'm seeing them looking directly at their screens, but I'm kind of thinking, okay, are they wondering how much longer is this particular witness going to be on the stand? How much longer are they going to continue to hear what feels like the same thing over and over again? And they're probably wondering why there's been so many holdups today as far as court starting, court ending, and just the overall testimony too.
Yeah, they don't have as much information as we do, including how every piece of evidence fits into the overall case. Before I let you go, Elizabeth, we talked about the jurors. Let's talk about Diddy. ATX Stanley asks, question for Elizabeth, what has Diddy been doing while the witnesses testified? Does he stare at them and nod or shake his head or doodle on a notepad? What is he doing?
So from what I could see of him, because I do have a tiny bit of an obstructed view today, but what I have seen of him is he is listening to Jane's testimony. I do see him when he is looking, it's either looking at Mark Agnifilo, who's normally sitting right beside him, possibly chatting with Brian Steele at points, who sits on the other side of him, and then kind of passing notes like he normally does, or just looking at Tinny Garagos do her cross-examination of the witness. And so I haven't seen the nodding over at the jury like I've seen him do for other witnesses per se, but he seems to, as far as just the events that happened this morning, it seems like he's still kind of listening to all the testimony, and if there's anything that they want to be asking, Diddy's definitely writing down that in a note, passing it off to his attorney so that way they can pass it off to Tinny Garagos.
Elizabeth Millner, I know you have to jump back into court. Thank you so much. I'm going to see you later for our sidebar, our recap of the entire day's testimony and events. I'll catch you then. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, so I'm going to continue the conversation, and I'll get back to the question that came before about, has your opinion changed? But before we do that, Safa, this is really interesting. So the judge said that there is a certain audio recording from December 2023 that is not going to be allowed into evidence. And the prosecutor here had argued that by that time, so Cassie had already filed her lawsuit, that Combs was allegedly making a record, maybe a video record, an audio record, that he was trying to paint a certain narrative, that he was trying to craft a narrative about what was going on with Jane, and it's a self-serving false narrative in the recording. And if that's true, I'm surprised that he wouldn't allow it in, but also, doesn't that go into other allegations that we've heard before? I mean, Mia testified that D-Rock, Sean Combs' former bodyguard, had reached out to her after Cassie's lawsuit and was kind of trying to seem to suggest that, everything that was going on with Cassie and Sean, it was all normal. It was a typical relationship, right? And that he was trying to get Combs to reach out to her. And he's already been accused of trying to influence witnesses and reach out to them and tamper with testimony. I mean, look, doesn't that make up some of the racketeering charges that he faces, the racketeering charge that he faces? So I find it interesting that the judge wouldn't allow this in because it seems quite relevant to the case.
I would think that it would be relevant. There's certainly evidentiary reasons that the judge may not have allowed it in. I think that whatever the note or recording might indicate could, of course, be something that would reflect possible witness tampering. But at the end of the day, if the government had this item in their possession, I assume that they would have included it in a superseding indictment against Mr. Combs, and to date, they still have not. So that's one thing. Not only that, but with respect to the voice note, one of the things that comes to my mind is, was it completed so that he could turn that over to his attorneys for legal representation or for legal purposes? And of course, correspondence between us and our clients, they are confidential and privileged. So could that be the issue? The first things first that the court is going to look at with regard to any piece of evidence that comes in is it relevant? This certainly could be relevant. Then the court will do the balancing test of whether it's probative or versus prejudicial, things of that nature, and any other further inquiry that the court needs to make to determine if this is a piece of evidence that could come in, and also could it be properly authenticated. So anything that comes in, videos, voice notes, things of that nature, they need to be properly authenticated. If this is Mr. Combs just making a note to himself with regard to, his defense and things like that, and he's not going to get on the stand to testify, then how does the government try to get that in? So that would be my possible reasoning as to why this is not going to be allowed for the moment, at least.
Dave, it's come out that we believe the prosecution's last witness, or maybe their last witness, will be a summary witness. So Danny asks, what is a summary witness?
Well, first off, I really appreciated Safa's comments just now. I think she's right on, because I didn't understand why they wouldn't be allowed to introduce that clear probative evidence against Diddy. And as far as a summary, well, and when you put on a case, you like to have someone who's a storyteller who can lead you through all the events of the case. And then at the end, you may want someone to be able to sum it up, someone who can connect dots, someone who is not just there for one small segmented reason, but who has knowledge about everything. Who would have knowledge about everything is KK, but she's not reliable.
I'll talk about KK in a second because we got a question coming in about this. But Dave, does it have to do anything with, like, there's a series of charts, or there's so much voluminous evidence that they kind of summarize it in a way, because you can't just go through every piece of it? Is that what a summary witness might do as well? And if so, I'm not entirely sure what all the charts would be.
No, it's not like an expert who then just does the job of the attorney. That's what closing argument is for. Right. The closing argument is when you summarize it and you can bring out your charts and the demonstrative exhibits. But no, the witness would just be someone who has something to offer, some probative information to offer, but can tie everything together. That's what they're talking about here.
Okay, Rich, you ready for this? We talk so much about KK, Christina Coram, who's been brought up so many times. I love our audience, Rich. I love our audience because they're so in tune. They have such good questions, and they make such good points in our polls, too. We put a poll up. Who do you think the defense's first witness is going to be? 62% say Christina Coram. We have 17% who say Stevie J. 11% say Alex Fine. This is Cassie Ventura Fine's husband. You ready for this? 8% say Diddy, that he's going to take the stand. But 62% think, we've been talking so much, Christina Coram has to be a prosecution witness. Is she going to be a defense witness?
To say what? I mean, first of all, what is she going to say in his defense that would be helpful? And second of all, if the prosecution doesn't call her, you're really going to put her on the stand and have her be cross-examined by the prosecution? That's your strategy? I just don't see that happening. I don't know what she would offer that would be useful defense evidence, and I don't know how that would outweigh what would probably happen on cross.
Let me tell you this. If they call her, she's like, I'm not saying she would say it in this way, but basically, there was no criminal enterprise. There was no criminal agreement. He was doing his things. We helped him here and there, but I didn't know what he was up to. Yeah, we set up hotel rooms. We thought it was for him and Cassie. We didn't know who he was getting involved with. We stay kind of out of that. Covering up crimes, not really. Like, if she was supposed to be the connective tissue for racketeering, and she's not that, it makes me wonder, that's maybe why the prosecution didn't want to call her? I don't know.
Well, by the way, so think about the optics of this, right? The defense calls her. So now she is acting on behalf of Sean Combs as a witness for his defense. And they cross-examine her. And I think that makes it even stronger that she's connected to the alleged criminal enterprise and the alleged criminal conspiracy, because now you have her at trial testifying on their behalf, whereas if the prosecution calls her as a witness, then there's some thought, oh, maybe she's made a deal with the prosecution, maybe she's turned on Diddy, maybe she's doing this to save her hide. If she testifies for Diddy, she doesn't have any of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw this to Alex, our producer, just asked, and I'll throw this to you, Safa, could KK be called as a rebuttal witness after the defense? Oh, well.
Not sure who you want to answer
Well,
that.
I threw it to you, Safa, but look, I got to say, Dave has been jumping up and down about that. So let me throw it to Dave first.
Oh, no, give it to Dave.
All right, no, I think yes. I think she is not going to be called as the defense's first witness. She's not going to be called as a defense witness. So I agree with Lawful Riches, by the way, that's his Twitter handle. I agree with Lawful Riches on that one 100%. I'm surprised that our audience would say like 68% said that she would be the first witness. That doesn't make sense. But would she be a rebuttal witness for the prosecution? Yeah, very possibly. I think she is that thing that hangs over the defense. Better watch out what you say, because we're going to bring her in and she's going to do great damage to you guys because she knows everything.